Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares with a top economic report. Today we focus on Zambia, post-elections, more haggling with mining companies, and a look at entrepreneurship in Jericho. First, a look at the headlines. Russia's fractured economy suffered another blow after credit rating firm Standard & Poor's cut its credit rating to junk. S&P cut Russia's rating to BB+, citing Russia's limited flexibility to use monetary policy to help spur growth. The rating agency expects Russia's economy to expand by about 0.5% annually from 2015 through 2018, below the 2.4% rate of previous years. Russia's economy is heavily dependent on oil exports and faces increased pressure as US and EU leaders threatened new sanctions. The ruble has dropped 51% in the past 7 months, fueling inflation and forcing the Russian central bank to drive up interest rates, curbing economic growth.
The fall of global oil prices isn't the reason for the downgrade of Russia. The reason, as usual, is the weakness of the Russian economy, the weakness of structural reforms, administration, lack of concrete plan, and the spending of currency and gold reserves. It is for all of these reasons that the rating agency will have downgraded Russia.
Moscow on Tuesday announced a plan that will see the economy return to a budget surplus in 2017. Capital outflows, which averaged $57 billion annually during 2009 to 2013, soared to $152 billion last year. Foreign currency reserves at the same time have dropped below $400 billion for the first time since August 2009. The new anti-crisis plan announced aims to freeze the level of spending and implement structural reforms.
Russia is almost incapable of borrowing from abroad at the moment. There is no way to refinance their debt, so it creates extra problems to pay back interest in foreign debt. All of that weighs on the budget and the currency and the gold reserves. The sanctions and the impact it has on the economy have led to this downgrade.
The EU on Monday warned Greece that its place in the Eurozone would be at risk if it failed to meet its austerity and debt commitments. Eurogroup head Jeroen Dijsselbloem said the Eurozone is ready to work with the Syriza government. The Greece's economic problems have not gone away. Europe's bailout program expires at midnight on February 28, and a failure to renew it would leave Greece unable to meet its financing needs. Dijsselbloem said the EU could not erase debts Greece incurred under the massive €240 billion bailouts, as Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has demanded.
The Greek people also realize that the major problems in the Greek economy have not disappeared or haven't even changed overnight for the simple fact that the election took place.
The president of state-owned energy giant Saudi Aramco said on Tuesday the market, not OPEC producers, should boost oil prices. The head of the world's largest oil company in terms of crude production and exports said he thinks even consumers would suffer from low prices in the long run. Saudi Arabia is the leading exporter in OPEC, which decided to maintain its output ceiling in November, allowing the price of oil to plunge further. Since June, the price of oil has fallen from more than $100 to a near 6-year low of $48 per barrel.
Saudi Arabia will not single-handedly balance the market on a downturn. We invest hundreds of billions of dollars in our production capacity. A lot of that production capacity is spare capacity that has saved the global economy time and time again when there were either disruptions or spikes in demand. That policy will be maintained.
NASA expects to save more than $12 million a seat flying astronauts to and from the International Space Station on commercial space taxis. Following a $6.8 billion contract with Boeing and SpaceX, NASA will pay $58 million a seat starting in 2017. The United States currently pays Russia's space agency Roscosmos $70 million per astronaut. NASA retired its space shuttles in 2011 owing to the growing expense and inherent risks of the shuttle program.
All this we're doing is so that it will enable us to eventually get humans to Mars. That's what this whole thing's about. Probably not for you folk, or not some of the older ones down there, but it's for my granddaughters. I have 3 granddaughters.
BP has frozen the pay of its 84,000 staff around the world in response to the plunge in the oil price. The drop in the price of North Sea Brent crude challenges oil producers who base their business plans on much higher prices. BP, which recently said it would spend $1 billion on job cuts, is already undergoing an overhaul prompted by the Gulf of Mexico disaster 5 years ago. The oil giant also has a 19.75% stake in Russian oil company Rosneft, which has been affected by both the falling oil price as well as the plunge in the ruble. The discovery of a new high-profile fraud case in Iran has caused uproar among Iranians as more large-scale corruption at the government level is revealed. A 43-year-old Iranian businessman is accused of fraud that the Iranian media says is worth as much as $34.3 billion. His company, Padid Shandi's Construction, used an advertising campaign on state television to ensure investors their money was safe. When information leaked about the company's huge debts, the judiciary intervened to avoid public anger, turning into a security threat given its 120,000 shareholders. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani warned that the economy, which has inflation of 17% and youth unemployment of 25%, cannot move forward if corruption is not curbed. The drop in the price of copper has weighed heavily on Zambia, which generates 73% of its exports from the industrial metal. And as a southern African country elected a new president, more haggling is likely between its mercurial government and the powerful mining firms that drive its economy.
Zambians have chosen their next president, ruling party stalwart Edgar Lungu, setting the stage now for more haggling between a mercurial government and the powerful mining firms that drive its economy. Well, Mr. Lungu, a former defense and justice minister, won 48.3% of the votes cast this week, the Southern African country's electoral commission said on Sunday. He was chosen to lead the Patriotic Front Party after the former president, Michael Sata, died in office in October following a long and secretive illness. Mr. Lungu will govern Zambia over the next 20 months to complete Mr. Sata's term until the next general election scheduled for September 2016.
We want to achieve affordable living standards for each one of you to make sure you are a proud Zambian. We do not want to say more. We want to listen and work.
Zambian presidential candidate Hakainde Hichilema denounced the country's presidential election as a sham on Saturday, accusing rival Edgar Lungu of stealing the vote.
This election has been a sham and does not reflect the will of the majority Zambians. If Edgar Lungu is sworn in as president, as he will certainly be today, I want him to know he is an illegitimate president.
Zambia is 8th in global copper production and 2nd largest in Africa. It's the principal resource of the country, and the minerals have found themselves at the heart of the presidential campaign. Mr. Lungu left the door open for dialogue with foreign companies, but at the same time is promoting a more just distribution of wealth. Zambia is attractive to foreign companies as it is widely understood not to follow labor laws, which has a serious impact on the local population. According to the World Bank, 70% of the population lives in poverty. Most live on less than $2 a day.
Despite ongoing discord within the unity government bonding Fatah and Hamas, local entrepreneurship continues to sprout. But for now, the economy in the Palestinian Authority continues to rely on production from nearby Jewish communities. I24 News reporter Daniel Roth brings us the following story of a new mushroom initiative in Jericho.
In the West Bank city of Jericho, a Palestinian mushroom farm is growing. The farm is called Amoro Agriculture, and it is the first here, started by 4 young Palestinians who saw opportunity in the lack of local mushrooms. The company got a start in 2013, but only started producing in December of last year.
We did some research into everything involved in planting the white mushroom. It was not easy because there were no previous experiments on this in Palestine. Therefore, everything was hard for us, in terms of our dealing with suppliers, because it took some time to explain to them exactly what we needed. And when we started to implement our research in Palestine.
None of the founders are farmers by trade. 3 of them are computer engineers, and the fourth was a business student. But they all have an eye on entrepreneurship. Though they aim to concentrate locally for now, they are aiming to export down the road.
We expect to sell at the local market in the West Bank. We are concentrating on Ramallah, which has the highest consumption of mushrooms in the West Bank. We will start from Ramallah and then we will sell to other West Bank cities. We're also working in order to sell to Gaza. In the first stage, our production will cover 40% of needs in the West Bank.
As for now, most of the demand for mushrooms is met by Israeli producers. Much of this comes from Israeli settlements, according to Reuters report.
This new company is producing the white mushroom, which is the first company of its kind in Palestine. As everyone knows, we usually depend on Israeli mushrooms in all the sectors, such as restaurants and hotels.
Jericho is situated in an ideal climate for growing mushrooms. Still, according to the founders, this kind of mushroom needs advanced tech, something unique that they bring to the table.
We're joined now in the studio by ITON for News reporter Natalie Ehrlich for a discussion of some other newsworthy stories from the world media in Media Watch. Natalie, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I understand we're going to be talking about millionaires and billionaires and what they do with their money.
Absolutely. Well, I thought it'd be fun to look at the mega rich today.
Yes.
And actually, there are a number of very interesting articles out there on the net, specifically from CNBC Business News. On their website, they have two interesting articles. Let's start with one. It takes a look at religion and wealth, and it breaks it down. So could you take a guess?
It's a very controversial situation here. Let's see which religion makes the most money.
Exactly.
Let's take a guess.
What do you think?
You could think about, who are the oil producers, right? Even though with the drop in the oil price, they're not making so much money anymore. And then, of course, there's the age-old stereotype of the Jews being rich.
Right. So this is actually really interesting. So what really surprised me, over 50% of the world's millionaires are actually Christian. And something else that really plays into this, out of all the countries in the world, most of the wealthy people come from Christian nations. 7 out of the 10 wealthiest nations happen to be Christian. And so you kind of wonder how much is at play here, being the country or the religion. What's really at play? So it's a little hard to dissect there, but your idea is actually really smart.
I could venture a guess there, quite frankly. I mean, if you look at the world history over the past 400 years or so, I mean, the countries that went out under imperialism, so to speak, and took over the world were Christian. I mean, Spain, Portugal, Holland, England. I mean, all of them, really.
Indeed.
Right?
So in a way, they had a leg up exploiting the resources of the world. Good point. And actually getting back to you, so the second religion that has the most millionaires are Muslims. So that does really tie in well with your idea in terms of oil.
Right. Where does it leave the Jews?
Well, the Jews actually do the worst, which could be surprising based on your idea or stereotypes, per se. So
Not my stereotype, by the way, but okay.
1.7% of the world's millionaires are actually Jewish, so it's quite low there, and it fell at the worst out of all the religions.
Interesting. Okay, hopefully it will blow that stereotype out of the window there.
Right. Another interesting article that CNBC had on its website on high net worth is actually tips for very wealthy individuals how they can avoid getting audited by the IRS.
Since we're talking about these high net, individuals, okay, so how can they avoid being audited?
Well, firstly, you should avoid any auditor, or avoid any accountant that perhaps has a history of its clients getting audited. That is one. So take a look at their history. Another one is also just avoiding very large round numbers, something that might really stand out.
Right.
Another...
Hold on, before you go on, I mean, from what I understand, I also read this article, essentially people who make $1 million or more are 9 times as likely to be audited than people who make less than $200,000.
Right, great point. Actually, the richer you are, the more likely you will get audited.
Right. Well, I guess it makes sense, right?
And one thing for sure you should totally avoid. I mean, if you have a yacht, make sure that in your papers you don't make mention of it, because that is just a huge red flag for the auditors, so that's not something you want to reference.
Presumably you have to mention it, but you can't say the word yacht.
Exactly.
What do you say? Big boat.
Yeah, you could say like... office boat, or come up with your own term to somehow clandestine approach to calling your yacht.
Right, and obviously if you change your numbers a lot, comparatively speaking to other people in your trade of work or whatever, it also would jump out.
Yeah, exactly. And something also aside from those swings, something to look out for, those tax deductions. So if you can compare yourself to other people in your professional group, if your items are just way higher than theirs, that's something also that could be a huge red flag to the IRS.
Okay. I mean, are they basing this on the fact that rich people have an inclination to cheat more? Or are they just really trying to make more money?
Well, just based on my own judgment, I would imagine that they're trying to make more money here.
Right,
I mean,
because obviously if they catch us, it's a different story. Anyways, Natalie Ehrlich, thanks for joining us in Media Watch.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that concludes our Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at I-24 News. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Follow me on Twitter, send us your comments, and join us again tomorrow.